Now, let's see, this is Thermate. I think I already showed you that. Expect variations, as I mentioned, depending on where you look at with your microprobe, and also depending on what composition, whoever it was, used. For different purposes, you might add potassium permanganate. It makes it react faster. For example, adding potassium permanganate is a great oxidizer. Ah, yes, the sulfur in the steel. Now we're seeing sulfur in the microspheres. Now I want you another quiz. Which one is from the World Trade Center and which one? These are both microspheres, you see. One's from the World Trade Center, from the dust, as it whispers to us, look at me, I have something to tell you. How I was formed, where I came from. And one of these is from a Thermate microsphere. Can you really tell which one is which? You really can't. And I don't remember. Oh yes, I do remember in this case. Okay, enough of that. Look, they have the same. They have the fundamental signature for Thermate, which is iron, sulfur, and aluminum. In addition, you've got this potassium and extra manganese. Extra manganese at around 3 or 4%. You see, that's a lot more than you have in structural steel from the World Trade Center sample. Carbon's a little different, but that doesn't help you much because the background here is carbon tape. So I think this is exciting data. It's publishable. We will be publishing it. Now, as I told Alex on the radio show, I was very glad this was going to be a university environment, so I can feel free to talk about it. That's typically what we do as scientists. We talk about our data, and then we publish them. But we do that. We talk about them before we go to the media. So that's the way it is. And I learned that from, gosh, a couple times. Hans Fleischmann experience. They went to the media first, and then they published it. And the physicists I know at their university were very displeased with them because they heard about it first from the press conference. Whereas now, this is a public meeting, everyone's invited, it's at a university setting, we can talk about it. And now we can talk about it wherever. Okay, it turns out the USGS, as I did some research, also talked about spheres in the dust, and in particular iron-rich spheres. Here they show in there, it's called the World Trade Center Dust Atlas, words to that effect. If you Google on USGS WTC Atlas, you'll be able to get this picture. This is one of their spheres. It is very similar in many ways, size and so on, to the spheres that we have seen and analyzed. Here's another. They only show 2 of these spheres. And this sphere, for some reason, was not in very good focus in the USGS Atlas, but you see comparable to the sphere. Very smooth and almost perfect sphere in both cases. So I called up, as I looked at this, the leader of the USGS electron microscopy lab in Denver. He was one of the prime authors on this study. They don't have much data there. I wanted to find out, had they seen this? Had they not seen this? I mean, as a responsible, trying to be a responsible person, I thought, well, maybe they had seen this and they had a good reason for not talking about these spheres much. They do have too big. So I called up Dr. Meeker on the phone, found him in his lab. He said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Stephen Jones." Didn't ring a bell with him. He said, "Who are you with?" Well, anyway, to make a long story short, I told him I was with S&J Scientific Company, which is true. That's my own mobile company, which I've had for about 15 years, and I'm the president of it. And so I'm the only employee, by the way, right? I'm self-employed. Okay, so anyway, that's true. It's all true. And he was willing to answer some questions. So I said, do you remember the iron-rich spheres that you observed in the World Trade Center theft? Oh, yes. Do you remember that? Do you remember what was in that? I mean, did you do much analysis? I can't remember. And maybe it's been about 2 years since the USGS report came out. By the way, Jim Gurley, I think this might be another request for FOIA, for example, to release their information. Because when you look inside, it's striking, isn't it, to see iron, aluminum, and sulfur in these quantities. And then potassium and manganese. I mean, you know, if you've had any chemistry, you think, wow, potassium permanganate. I mean, you know, it just looks like, maybe he's totally familiar with thermite. I said, do you have any explanation for these iron-rich spheres? He said, well, maybe it's because on the ground zero, they were cutting up the steel with the oxyacetylene torches, and those little steel spheres got into the... See, I already looked for that. I mean, that was the hypothesis I wanted to check. And I looked for that, and I said, look, you know as well as I do that the steel is mostly iron. And when you melt it, you'll get oxygen. But we have seen a large fraction of aluminum in there as well. And I think I mentioned the sulfur also.
Have you secured these samples?
Yeah, have I secured the samples? Yes, yes, yes. And furthermore, I have a sample of these microspheres. I gave them to another scientist. I didn't tell him where they came from. I asked him, would you analyze these for me, a blind test? He's willing to do that. He's an expert on XCDS. And that's what we do as scientists, you know, we test with other people. So I'm trying to cover the bases correctly here. And, you know, and I said furthermore to Dr. Meeker, I said furthermore, if it doesn't have the composition of steel. He pretty much conceded that, even though he couldn't remember just what was in it. But the other thing was, I said, look, that working at the World Trade Center, how could those droplets travel? Let me just go on here. Oh. This is from the USGS report. It shows the location of where they took samples and the gross composition of the dust. Let me see here. Right in here would be ground zero. Some of these samples were very far, then blocks away. And I asked him, didn't you see these iron-rich spheres? I knew that they had seen them. He said, yes, they're not uncommon, he said. And then later he said, frequently seen, you know. And of course,